Belief is the enemy of knowing.
All right, man. Welcome to Crow 777 Radio. This is episode 483. Jason Lindgren is with me, and George Wiseman returns in a minute here. I'll look up the episodes that George has been on with us. As you may remember, George has a Brown's gas machine. Now, I want to say a couple things before I get the guys in. First of all, this technology is not for you if you are lazy or if you're not going to be responsible. In my view, this technology is for responsible adults. If you don't clean your machine, if you don't set your machine up properly, not good at all. On the other side, I would like to say this. For those who have followed a long time, you remember that my mother passed away near Easter of 22 of dementia and Parkinson's, as the mainstream calls it. This is where I saw the machine do some amazing things. The first thing that happened, to refresh everyone's memory, is that my mother one day when we had first set up the machine was not present. She was in outer space somewhere. The dementia had creeped on that day heavy. I put the breathing apparatus on her from George Wiseman's Brown's gas device, and within 15 minutes, she was present. Now, I want to say a thing because so many people are getting dementia, and here's the issues that I had. While the machine would bring her back to present as the disease progressed, when she was in her right mind, she got to the point where she recognized how miserable she was. In other words, had I not put her on the machine, she would have been thinking she was in childhood or riding a train or whatever the dementia had put in her mind. If I brought her back to reality, over about 2 hours, she would become miserable because she was aware of the condition that she was in. But here's the real thing. She got a melanoma on top of her head. I sent George images of this, and we had talked, and this is just flat out amazing. I took the hydrogenated water, if that's the right thing to call it, the water that you can drink if you read the directions, that's had the Brown's gas going through it. So I'll just call it hydrogenated, but that's probably not quite right. And I soaked the sterile gauze. The part on the top of her head where the melanoma was bigger than a quarter, not quite the size of a 50-cent piece. I put the soaking hydrogenated water sterile gauze on it, and then I put a shower cap to capture the gas that you would normally breathe under it. I did it twice or 2 or 3 times a day for about 10 days. The whole scabby looking, nasty, cancerous thing started to peel off. And it did. I just got some sterile tools. I had the nurse that came in with me, and I lifted it off, and the nurse was blown away. There was no more black. There was fresh pink skin. The melanoma never came back. When it dried, for a while longer, we did that. And so what I'm telling you here was she had a melanoma that the doctors wanted to cut off her scalp at almost 90. So you know how the healing's going to be. You know the hairs, they're all this. And what happened there blew my mind. Additionally, Rose has had endless emails about people who smoke or have COPD or who have breathing issues that are saying this changed everything for them. Now, I'm not trying to tell you this is the miracle cure for everything, but what I'm telling you is we get reports, and what I just told you, melanoma of all things, was dealt with. Just to finish off here before I get the guys in. George was on episodes 382 and 365. You can check out those back episodes. If you go to the website, at the top navigation, there's a sponsored link. I've moved all the things that we support or sponsor as useful products. George Wiseman's image is in there as a sponsored link. It's the second row from the bottom. It has his face on the image. It's called Brown's Gas Machine, is under the caption. If you choose to get one of these devices, that sponsored link, I think it saves you something like $500. All right, there's my big mouthful. Welcome, Jason.
Oh, and a chilly good morning.
All right. Do you want to have anything to add? I mean, we've seen so many emails. And the other thing I guess we should mention, Jason, is people who are relatively healthy seem to notice very little difference when they use the Brown's gas device. People who are not so healthy seem to be the ones that we hear from that said, wow.
Well, I use it every day. Predominantly, I drink the water, and I like the way it makes me feel. And I definitely notice if I'm not drinking enough of it, I just feel like something's missing.
The first time that I drank the water, it felt like my body wanted it. As it stands now, here I am, the responsible adult. Since everything has happened here, mom's passed away. We've had to deal with the house and everything. I now need to go clean the machine as is directed in the instructions and reset it up again. Anyhow, welcome, George. Sorry for the big soliloquy.
It was perfect. That was amazing. And to address the healthy thing, it's really important that people that feel healthy do the supplementation because it maintains health. And my goodness, my God, that is the ideal. You don't want to have to bring yourself back from an ailment. You want to not be sick in the first place. So and that's what they're discovering when they do the rodent studies. For example, the smallest or the least gain was mice had a 30% healthful life extension when they were inhaling 2% gas mixture for their life from when they were young. And another mouse one was 50%. And there was a rat study that was done that the rats just didn't die. They stayed healthy until they had to, the experiment ended. I don't remember how much over it was. I need to look that study up. But they actually euthanized the rats because they weren't dying. So isn't it good? Like I expect at this particular point to be able to play with my great grandkids. I'm playing with my grandkids and I enjoy it greatly, but I expect to play with my great grandkids. So it is important. And you're right, when you're feeling healthy, when you are healthy, there isn't too much of a change. Like you notice from when you have ailments and then have to fix them. But the idea is to maintain health. And even people who think themselves healthy, like I did, like when I started inhaling Brown's gas, I didn't start because I thought it was going to make me healthier. I did it because I wanted to prove that it was safe, because people kept asking me if they could inhale the gas. And because I knew it to be an explosive gas, I was saying no. Well, it turns out I was wrong. First of all, you can inhale a non-explosive mixture if you keep the amount of hydrogen in your intake breath less than 4%. So we set up everything to do that. And I was inhaling 2% mixture, which is most of the scientific, there's thousands now of scientific studies are set at 2%. So that's what I did. And I was getting these health gains that totally astonished me. And even after inhaling for several years now, I've been inhaling since March of 2016. Last year, I discovered that I had regained my balance. And what I was doing is I was washing my toes while I was in the shower. I just lifted up my foot and I was washing my toes without leaning against the shower wall, which for at least a decade, I'd have to lean against the shower wall when I was in my 50s to wash my toes for balance, because I couldn't balance. But now I not only had the strength, but the balance to be able to lift and flexibility to lift my foot up and wash my toes, which I found to be quite amazing when I suddenly realized that's what I was doing. And so you can be healthier without even knowing it, without even really realizing it. So anyway, that's my little spiel on health.
All right. Well, there's a couple things I want to mention here. One thing that I noticed within a couple days when I first got it is it seems to pick your libido back up in more of like a physical stamina way. If you feel like you have a bit more oomph, but it does certainly affect your libido. At least it did mine. But here's the thing that I think we should mention too. So my wife was having problems with her teeth and not feeling well, but we didn't know that it was her teeth. And the first time that I put her on the machine, the next morning, she had an abscess. And so we said, wow, there's something wrong with the teeth, went in. And then the dentist is all, oh yeah, there's these problems. And it feels to me like what happened was it made the abscess express much more quickly. And the other thing I think that's important is, so we laid off while that was immediately fixed, because she woke up and it expressed she didn't feel so hot. But the point is, I wonder how many weeks or months might have went on And I'm just guessing if it did, in fact, force it to express before we would have even been aware of it.
Yes. My response to that first with the libido, I think it's one of the two things that caused me to still be alive today. I am not joking. When my late wife died, and shortly after that I started inhaling the Brown's gas, I was in really bad shape. I seriously did not care if I lived or died, which was one of the reasons why I was willing to inhale what I thought was potentially an explosive gas. And I videotaped myself while I was doing it with the idea that there'd be a video for posterity if I happened to come to an unfortunate end. So and that video is on my YouTube channel, and people can compare that video to my more earlier pictures, which are also on my YouTube channel, and you can see the difference. I seem to have regressed biologically at least 15, sometimes 20 years, depending on what pictures you look at. So two things. First of all, a doctor in Germany is now prescribing Brown's gas for depression, which I'm telling you, when you're in grief, there is no depression worse than that, in my opinion. And secondly, so I'm sure that the Brown's gas was helping me with depression, and I didn't even know it at the time. But the second thing I really did notice was it did take me a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks, but I noticed that my libido was, for me, it turned out to be almost like a teenager. I seriously wanted to have sex. And my body was just ready and willing. And I'm telling you that it's almost impossible not to care if you live or die when your body is like that.
At what age, George? What age are we talking about here? Typically, I think libido for most men in this country starts falling off somewhere in the 40s, maybe.
Yeah, and that's about what happened to me. I'm just trying to figure. It was in 2016. I'm 65 now. This is 20. So like 6 or 7 years ago, I was in my late 50s. Yep.
So I think I might append what my experience was. Clearly, there's a revival of the libido, but it's almost like a vigor, I guess I would say, and maybe a mental sharpness that accompanies it, something like that. I don't really know how to describe it. It's a feeling of well-being, but there's some energy there.
Yes, I would agree with all of that. And my equipment wasn't, up to par really either. I it was hard to get erect, and I hadn't had sex for probably 10 years before that. And so everything started to work correctly. And there's actually a reason for it, having to do with something called Easy Gel. Are you familiar with Gerald Pollack's work and his what's called Easy? They call Easy Water.
I'm not sure.
Okay, this is really important and dramatic, and it's Brown's gas that does it, not just the hydrogen. Hydrogen is good; it's a building block of life, but the Brown's gas contains another gas we call electrically expanded water. It's water that's in a plasma form. It's water that has soaked up electrons until it's become a gaseous form that is not water vapor or steam. It's actually water, H2O, that is electrically charged to a point where it's become a plasma. Okay, that said, I just did some experiments with the University of Washington, Gerald Pollack's work, and one of his graduate students. We put oxygen, we put hydrogen, and we put Brown's gas in the chamber that forms this exclusion zone gel. And to back up just a little bit, exclusion zones, the EZ stands for exclusion zone. And what that means is when water comes in contact with a hydrophilic surface, it will spontaneously form a gel that is H3O2 negative. Okay, so H2O2 is hydrogen peroxide. So this H3O2 is not water; it's a gel that is formed from water spontaneously. And some people are calling that structured water, which is incorrect as well, but because it's not H2O. Nevertheless, we get this gel that forms spontaneously on hydrophilic surface. It turns out that virtually every surface inside your body is hydrophilic, okay, water loving. And so this gel forms around all your veins, arteries, and capillaries, and of course around all of the items in your blood, like your red blood cells. Your red blood cells have to go through the capillaries, but the red blood cells are twice or even 3 times as large as a capillary. So they have to squeeze down and look like a hot dog if you're looking at the photos and videos online, and squeeze all out of shape, and then they go along the capillaries and go to the other side. Well, it turns out there's two very important things that are going on there. First of all, the heart, and you can look this up online. It's hard to find because the medical establishment doesn't like it to be known, but the heart doesn't pump enough pressure to pump blood through your system. This is a scientifically proven fact. The heart does not pump blood through your capillaries. It can't. There's not enough pressure. And it turns out that Gerald Pollack, Professor Gerald Pollack, he should really have a Nobel Peace Prize for this. I tell you, all these discoveries that came out of the University of Washington, his lab there. It turns out that when you have a very small tube, like capillary size, that has easy gel around in it, it will spontaneously start to flow fluid. Fluid will automatically start flowing with no energy input other than the formation of the easy gel itself. And it turns out the easy gel in the body is enhanced by thermal, like infrared energy. If you shine an infrared light on it, the gel layer will get thicker, okay? So it's one of the reasons that infrared energy helps our bodies, because it makes this easy gel thicker. All right, so getting back to what's happening here, anyone who understands fluid dynamics knows that fluid will always take the path of least resistance. So how come a heart pumping approximately in the middle of our chest the blood reaches evenly to the tips of all my fingers and toes and head and eyelashes everywhere in my body, gets the right amount of blood flow, every single cell? The reason is because the heart can get the blood to the capillaries, and then the capillaries themselves actually pump the blood through and then out into the veins, and it goes back to the heart. So the heart is just doing this major bulk movement, and it has enough pressure to do that, but the capillaries themselves are actually doing this. It all comes back to the EZ gel. Well, it turns out that Brown's gas is another way of making the EZ gel layer thicker. Oxygen doesn't do it, hydrogen doesn't do it, Brown's gas does do it. So when you're inhaling the Brown's gas, you're not only getting the energy, electrons, directly from this electrically expanded water, but this electrically expanded water is also helping your whole body be healthier, because actually one of the things that plumps up all your cells is this EZ gel inside the cells as well. So it's absolutely vital to life, and the Brown's gas enhances it. Okay, there's my spiel on the EZ gel.
So, but you also mentioned the easy gel has a negative charge, did you say?
Correct, because it has electrons. Electrons are negatively charged.
So that's going to play, two opposing charges also create, but
that's exactly right. I was just a quickly thing too, that it actually makes the surfaces extremely slippery, not only because the easy gel is as slippery as a gel, but because the negative charge on the capillaries and the negative charge on the red blood cells repel each other. So they actually slide through almost like like these maglev trains, if you see what I'm saying, because you've got these like charges repelling. Okay, go ahead.
So there were numbers of people over the last couple times you were on who ended up obtaining the machine. So I just want to cover a couple things about usage while we're in hour one. So from my part, my mother passed away. We had to clean 4 generations of stuff out of a house, just everything that happens when parents die. So my machine sat for some months. So clearly I need to clean it. Is there anything else I should be aware of? It's been sitting, like it ended up, it was being used daily, and then it sat for some months now. Would you advise anything?
Okay. First, I'm sorry for your loss. I lost both my parents this last year as well. I understand. I also understand how it is to go through the estates and try to clean things out. I swear my dad tried to give things away before he died, but there's still a lot of stuff to do. So I'm sorry for that for you too. I know that that's a lot. And for anybody out there, it's always good to pre-plan your exit from the planet so that you don't leave a big mess behind.
That's for sure. That is for sure. 2 things. And before you answer, everyone should be planning if their parents are getting older, what's going to happen. Do it now. The other thing is if you're thinking about your own life, make sure you cover the people that you love that are going to inherit whatever you leave, because it can be a nightmare. My father was meticulous, and it still was a lot to deal with anyhow. So my machine was being used, and then everything happened. It sat for months. What do I need to be aware of?
Yes, I agree on the meticulousness. The same thing's happening with my father's estate. All right, the machine sitting. Okay, when it sits, essentially nothing happens except that the lye in it can crystallize. So you need to get rid of these lye crystals that are in there. So first you would pour out the solution and save it, and then do multiple hot water rinses, hot tap water, just pouring in the hot tap water. It's about 1.5 liters, a quart and a half, and lifting the front and back of the machine up to about 60 degrees. So it's over 45 degrees, tipping front to back very slowly. So the hot water can rush through all the tubings and orifices and dissolve this lye crystallization that's probably happened in there. Once all the lye is out, and you just keep dumping the hot water back in the sink as it cools, because once the water cools a little bit, it doesn't absorb or dissolve the crystals as well. So you keep putting hot water in every 2, 3, maybe 5 minutes at the most. You do that until you see that the site tube and everything are all clean, and you can assume then that the inside of the machine is clean, and then you put your lye solution back in, top it up with distilled water, turn on the switch, and enjoy.
Okay, so he said there's a little, I don't know if you've modernized the look since I got my machine, George, but there's a little levels window. And let me give a couple tips to people that have never done this, that are going to do this. Pay attention to the amount of water, the distilled water you're going to put in. And the thing is you're going to put in the recommended amount. You're going to look at the viewer up front, and you're going to think there's not enough yet. And if you put more in, eventually it's going to work its way through the system. You're going to have put too much. The red light will come on, and you're going to have to extract. So what I learned was pay attention to the quart or whatever it is. It tells you in the directions. Put half of it in, tip the machine front and back. Put the other half of it in, tip the machine front and back. Walk away for 4 minutes, and then come look at the site window. And that's at least on the older version that I noticed. Jason, you've been using the heck out of it. You weren't interrupted as I was. Are there things you think are helpful to add?
Do make sure you keep it clean, and always keep the water levels right where they're at. Don't overfill anything, or you have water squirting out of the cannula, which is annoying. Other than that, I've had absolutely no problems with the machine whatsoever. So I know that the lye thing can be dangerous, but quite honestly, it's not a big deal. I mean, I don't expect anyone who's a listener of the show to have intellectual difficulties with cleaning and maintaining this machine.
No, the first time I set it up, I'm not the most mechanical guy in the world, believe it or not. Luckily, I married who I married, much more mechanical than I am. But on top, there's a little device that you put Teflon tape and thread. When you do that, make sure you do a good job. If you don't, what you will notice is little specks will build up over time of the seepage. And it really isn't that big a deal. When we first did this, there were people gunning for George, and I got nervous at first. All these people saying, oh, this is the worst thing in the world, and people are dying, and just full on attack. And I thought, what is this about? Well, I figured out what it's about over time. But setting that aside, what I realized is an responsible adult that does things right, cleans their machine. There's really, I mean, come on. I just explained to you how a melanoma almost the size of a 50% piece was going to be carved off with a scalpel, my mother's head, at 90. Will that ever heal, at 90 years old? And what about all that hair? They shave it back, but you know what happens when you cut where hair is? All that, I mean, it has the potential to be a nightmare. Over 10 days, it just peeled off and pink skin came back. Even the hair grew where the pink skin was. When she passed away, I could still see where it was, but there was none of that black or white crusty developments that you see with the melanoma. And I'm just saying that the nurse that was there, she couldn't believe what she had just witnessed. And I had to tell her, you can't go back to the hospital and start spouting off about this. I said, well, you just saw what you saw, share it with whoever you want. But I began to realize why people were putting the sniper rifle. And what was odd is they were coming at me. And so I said, look, if you got a problem with someone, why don't you email them? But I noticed they didn't, George. they kept trying to snipe through me. But to put a fine point on it, there was a lot of, it's like the legal things. Jason and I have, you know what? And I just got an email. Every time Kurt's on, you argue with Kurt. You got to knock that off, Crow. what we find in the legal thing is people get very married to what they figured out. And they're proud to have figured out such complex ideas. But then it becomes almost like this is the only way that's workable. All those other people don't know what they're doing. And it's not true. And the hydrogen groups that are just doing pure hydrogen, we found the exact same thing. And it's not fair. It's not fair at all. The legal minds that are doing this, you're not giving people a fair shake, which is why we cover so many avenues and try to be thorough about it. But what I can tell you is of everything that we've had from emails and people who are in bad ways, it is almost miraculous in some cases. And then in others, like Jason is a good example, you just have your vitality. And the thing about the libido that struck me, George, was when you start losing your libido, that's kind of a sign that you're sliding down the other way now, right? You're older. You're not going up the side of the mountain. You're coming down the other side. At least that's how I take it. But it was the vigor that came with it. And with the vigor, a mental acuity, I don't really know how to describe it. It's not off the charts, but it's enough that it matters.
Yes. Okay. And the same thing has happened to me even today. Like I got up at 3:30 this morning. I get up at 3:30 7 days a week. I go to bed at 8:30, something like that. And I'm usually working right up until that time, 7 days a week. How many 65-year-old men do you know can do that? 7 days a week. I'm going to be taking a vacation next week for the first time in 4 years. And my wife is really looking forward to it. And I heal so fast. And mental acuity. I find if I'm not inhaling the Brown's gas and I'm sitting into my computer for hours at a time, I start to get bored. I start to kind of doze off a little bit. I don't drink coffee, by the way. But I realize, I don't have my cannulas on. So I put on my cannulas, start inhaling the Brown's gas. Within a few minutes, we're talking 5, 10 at the most, I am alert, focused. I can help people, and the hours flow by, and I just go from one thing to the next. It's absolutely astonishing. Again, who can say that? It's incredible.
Of all the people that have come and gotten the equipment and checked it out for themselves, what kind of groups of people? Like what I've witnessed, the melanoma on the head thing alone, I never got by that. It's like, oh my God, this could be studied in labs. This could be an alternative to taking a scalpel to someone. And it's shocking that, you don't expect it to be that way. And then you start realizing how much possibility is out there in the world that is completely being ignored. But based on the amount of emails we got, I think, and maybe Rose will message me if I get this wrong, I think maybe the biggest, wow, this really helped me, was people with serious breathing issues and skin issues.
I haven't really evaluated it. I get testimonials every day, as you can well imagine, because when you the testimonials that you were getting, and it really covers a spectrum. I'm going to go back to 1996, and the very first time I heard about Brown's gas being used for health in a melanoma was this guy who he had a melanoma on his forehead, almost identical to your mother. It was 3 weeks before his melanoma was gone, and he just treated it with the bubbled water. He didn't treat it with the cap and the gas. Later, another guy did that in Germany. They did that, treated the melanoma only with the Brown's gas, but with the shower cap with the gas, but no water with the hydrogenated water, the Brown's gas bubbled water. So you did both, and you had a faster healing. But back then, so already melanomas have consistently been taken off by the Brown's gas, and that's a skin. The skin is the largest organ in your body, and it also is an eliminative organ. So if you happen to be getting, for example, like you had an abscess with the teeth, a rash or something suddenly pop up after you start inhaling the gas, that could be the skin expressing, getting rid of something that was in there in your body that now needed to get rid of. And the skin was the easiest way for it to do it, so it did it that way. And then once the rash is gone, your skin is healed, and away you go. In fact, the Brown's gas does a really good job of healing rashes and psoriasis and skin ailments like that. And you can imagine that anything that's happening outside the body, like your lungs are theoretically outside your body. you're inhaling, it goes into where the lungs are, but they're still outside your body. And so is your digestive tract. In theory, when they look at it in a medical way, your digestive tract is actually outside your body. So the skin and digestive tract and the lungs, when you're inhaling and ingesting this water, are really obvious ways for things to heal. Like there's a whole bunch of people that have IBS and various kinds of digestive issues that this heals as well. So we got to remember that then it goes inside your body, because when you inhale it in the lungs, it takes it up in the blood, and it's been shown that it goes in about 15 minutes at 2% inhalation rate, your blood is saturated. And if you can keep it saturated, then it starts to deal with ailments, cancers, and nerves and all kinds of things inside your body as well. So everything you're seeing outside your body, that starts happening inside your body as well. A case in point, a woman just last week reported her stage 4 ovarian cancer was gone. In a scale, I forget exactly what they call this scale, cancer, some CA 125. But if you look up that cancer scale, cancer antibodies 125, CA 125, I think it is. 35 is considered normal, and she had a 6 after having stage 4, which means systematic going through your body cancer starting in the ovaries. She's now to a cancer rating of 6.
Breathing, topical, drinking. What was she doing with the Brown's
all
gas?
of that. And that is one of the things I'm saying is that some ailments, if you look at the scientific studies, some ailments are best resolved using the bubbled water, and some are, and actually I'd say that's about 10%, and 90% are best resolved using the inhalation. But as you saw, when you use them both together, they work in synergy, and you get the best of all worlds. So that's why I always recommend both the drinking and the inhalation. In fact, one thing I want to note, as for all those people out there that are using the AquaCure and those that will, you have to be careful to drink the water, because one thing I discovered early on was that when I'm inhaling a lot, 4 hours or more a day, and I'm inhaling up to 12 hours these days, but usually about 8, I don't have a thirst. I'm not thirsty. Even if my lips start to crack from not having enough liquid water in me, I don't get thirsty. So whatever it is that causes the thirst thing in your body, if you're inhaling, it kind of takes care of that. I guess just having enough hydrogen in your body or something like that. So you have to be careful to just set up a system so that you make sure to drink your 2 or 3 quarts of water a day by habit, because you aren't going to get thirsty. I'm just giving a little heads up there.
So Rose actually sent me a couple, and the big email backs are people who have smoking, had chronic coughs, damage from smoking cannabis or cigarettes for an entire life. There are people we know who used to hack a lot, which that is done. We have examples from other people we know that like had a pimple, I guess, for, something that could be lanced using it. But here, I should add this. Here's what I noticed. I want to get your feedback on it. So I actually talked to you when I found out, when my mom went in and they said, oh, that's cancer on your mom's scalp, and we want to cut that off there. Well, they said 2 things. They said she's almost 90. Maybe we just let it go. And I was like, this, so uncomfortable, and it's going to get worse. It's on top of the head. It's just like, no, something's got to be done here. So I talked to you. When I noticed after a few days that it was probably improving, because I was thinking, did I see this or didn't I? So I start taking pictures so I can compare. After about the 4th day, when I took the sterile gauze and saturated it, I saturated it. So it was dripping saturated when I put it on the crusty cancerous growth. And what I noticed is it saturates into that whole scab-like carbuncle looking white crusty cancerous thing. And I did that for the rest of the days up to about 10 days-ish. So at the end, when it started to lift away, that whole thing had been softened. So it wasn't a crusty lump anymore. So what I'm saying is I saturated. I mean, it's dripping off the top of the scalp. I've put so much liquid on it.
Yes, that's exactly the way to do it. And that's the way that the guy did it in 1996 as well. But he did put it was a smaller, just Like it was about the size of a dime, I'm assuming, because he just used a bottle cap and put cotton in there and soaked it, and then just kept re-soaking that cotton several times a day.
So the other thing is, I finally noticed that it just looks like a nasty cancerous scab is what it looked like. And I sent you a before and after picture. When I noticed it was lifting away, one day I got sterilized stuff and I grabbed onto the edge of it just to see, and I lifted it a little bit. Then I started saying, you know what, I don't want to make this worse, but I could see it was lifting. And then I went for a number of days more. Then I waited till the nurse who'd been coming once a week or twice a week for forever was there. And I had her there just in case. And she at first she said, I don't think you're going to be able to lift that off. And I said, but look, it's pretty much off. And she said, but all the hair is in it. And when it lifted off, it just literally did. There was, it looked moist underneath, but a day later, it was looking like pink skin. 2 days later, it just looked like pink skin. And I thought to myself, the hair will never grow back there. And it did. There were little hairs growing back there. So it's every time I think about this, it blows my mind, because if I can know it and you can know it, what the hell, doctors who are supposed to be relieving the suffering of people? The choices I were given were, let it go. She's old. She's going to die. That's a miserable choice. Here's some drugs because we're not going to touch it. And this will just dope her out so she won't, think about it. And that's a horrible choice. And the other one was, we cut it off. And so I'm just saying, man, to this day, it blows my mind that these options are out there. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit. Have you thought about the cymatic properties? Like lately, I've been going back and I'm doing a lot of research on solfeggio tunes, and I'm fascinated that there were originally 6 solfeggio tones known from monks, apparently, I think is supposed to be the people that discovered it. Then another guy came and used number reduction in the way I do. 1 and 9 becomes 10. 10 is 1. So just basic number reduction. He did it with verses of the Bible, and this guy discovers another 3 solfeggio tones. So now we have 9 frequencies. And it occurred to me, after thinking about what happened with the cancer, there's got to be a very beneficial resonant tone in the Brown's gas.
Well, we set it up with 432. You can set any tone you want, and it does impress on the gas, and that is a healing tone. The tone of love, 528?
528. It's one of the solfeggios as well.
Right. I found a lot of people prefer that. Actually weren't doing as well on the 432 and switched to the 528 and just blossomed. So definitely people will want to experiment with that feature of the AquaCure machine, which pretty much isn't on any straight hydrogen machines. And yes, I found it very unfortunate that the people who have vested interest in pure hydrogen are so
no, it was nasty. We'll just leave it at that, George. I don't want to draw fire again, but there was no cause. And believe me, I do my due diligence. I take things like this serious, and I don't appreciate people just being malicious with nothing to back it. But the other thing I would mention is what you were pointing out. You can set what's called a Hertz frequency. I don't like that name. I don't like that word. Cycles per second is what we are talking about. We should have never went to Hertz. Cycles per second lets you know what you're doing and what you're talking about. So instead of saying Hertz, I'm going to say cycles per second. There are 9 solfeggios. You have a device on the front that's a little push button device that lets you set the rate. If you use one of those 9 solfeggios, one of the amazing things about solfeggios is if you use basic numerology breakdown, so 3, if it was 36, you would add those together, that becomes a 9. All the basic solfeggios reduce to 3, 6, or 9. Does everyone out there remember what supposedly Tesla said were the keys to the universe? 3, 6, and 9. But what I'm telling you is they're starting to recognize and get back, like the Gregorian chants were all based on the original 6 solfeggios. They're realizing that one of them is supposed to be like DNA healing. Another one, the 528, is big. But it has to do, how can I express this? It's like the idea of, you've heard people use a mantra where it's Om. And by the way, Amen relates to that, even through the Hebrew. But in Om, the more appropriate way to think about it is not OHM. The more appropriate way, from my way of thinking, is AUM. So there's three parts: Om. And what they're saying they're doing is from the lower kind of chakras, you're lifting up into a higher consciousness. Now, the tones in solfeggio can be related in a similar way. I'm not describing this very well. My point is if you do a little work looking up solfeggios, you can absolutely set the cycles per second or the frequency rate on the gas and the water. This is a big deal. And I think as I get back into it, I'm going straight to 528 first. We used 432. By the way, everybody listening, when I talked about the cancer on my mom's head or the dementia, we were setting on 432. But I've done a lot more research and I'm very intrigued by 528. Jason, anything you want to get in here?
I am curious, what would the difference be between 432 and 528, other than the fact that I know they're different frequencies?
I can't answer that question. Crow can probably do a better job.
So if you look up the solfeggios, you'll see that one would be commonly known to help with depression, as an example. One would be known to supposedly repair DNA and cell structures. And by the way, there are literally 3 more solfeggios. So there's 9 now. And isn't it amazing that they had 6? Now there's 9. Every one of them reduces to 3, 6, or 9. You can see what's going on here. It's amazing. And now when you begin to think back on why our musical instruments, middle A, was tuned to 440. It used to be 432. 432 is one of the solfeggios. So why did they do it? You know why they did it. And what are we talking about? They changed it by 8 cycles a second to take the positive effects off it. So the point I'm making is that we all know what cymatics is. We all know that it's how form is created. If you don't believe me, go look at someone throw sand on a plate and vibrate it, and magically geometry is formed. That is a 2D representation of form being magically made out of thin air because of a frequency rate. You can look up the solfeggios and you can see what's commonly attributed to each one. But what's more is if you have one of these devices, and you're a responsible adult and you know to clean your machine and set it up properly, you can go use your intuition to examine the solfeggios and then set your machine. By the way, it was completely intuition that got me to soak the gauze and put it on my mother's head. And as I started doing it, I'm getting a little nervous. But at that point, I had pretty much given up on mainstream. All they wanted to do was drug her. That is all they wanted to do. Something's wrong here. Here's a new drug. Oh, here, give her this tougher drug that, puts her out of her misery. So she's completely doped. And then there were all these ones that they wanted to test for the dementia. Well, dementia is different in everybody. These are powerful psychotropic drugs. We'll try this one. If that doesn't, and it was just this nightmare of, no, I'm done. No, I am done. But if you use your intuition, you study the frequencies, and that's how this needs to be done, by the way. This is the era we're getting into. I accept that we're in an ascending era right now. The idea in the old Hindu would be that in the dark ages that we're leaving, called the Kali Yuga, some people don't believe this. They think we're still in the Kali Yuga for another 400,000 years or something. Hope that's not right. They would say that they were at 25% virtue, human beings. In the golden age, we're at 100% virtue, which means if we are in the ascending Dwarpa Yuga, as they call it, we would be coming into 50% virtue. My main point here is adults need to get back to being adults. You need to get your intuition back, look at the problem you're having, feel your way into how you should proceed. It's more than just a feeling. And then, look at the solfeggios. But anyhow, this is me just talking, I guess. Did you have anything else to go ahead?
You're absolutely correct in all of that. And as people learn what's going on and they see this manifesting in reality, the stuff that science, it's funny, there's scientists that say, if we can't measure it, it doesn't exist. And as an inventor, working with stuff that can't be measured, but quite obviously exists, even gravity, they didn't measure it, if you will, until Newton got knocked on the head with an apple, kind of thing. So, and as far as hydrogen for health, it was over 100 years ago. I wish I had immediate access in my archives to these studies where they were using hydrogen for healing over 100 years ago. And then modern medical science just kind of ignored it and went on with the drugs and stuff.
But we had the 1900s, the Rockefellerization of everything.
Yeah.
And by the way, I got to make a mention, or I'm going to be seeing comments. The gravity comment is a prime example of scientism at its best. If you honestly want to look at such things, you have to admit that that is a theory based on a theory. So at what point did we come to the day where we've been living in a world where everything falls every day, and all of a sudden we need to invent a force and some math to get behind it? Instead of just saying things fall, we invent this whole other structure that up until this day cannot be called a law. And actually they're starting to straddle the border. And I say all that just to save us, because we've covered this a few times, but the importance of your ability to set the cycles per second, or what is called a Hertz rate, also makes what you've got going on here a unique offering. And from my point of view, and my point of view is very limited, I study what interests me. I think if you just zeroed in on the solfeggios alone, I don't think you can go wrong there. And that's also based on the provable work of Dr. Emoto. Has Emoto influenced you at all?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, it was one of the things I was going to bring up next. The memory of water, and not only Emoto, but a whole slew of science where they impress certain energies into water, frequencies and other emotions and things, and then use it to grow plants or make animals better, all that kind of thing. The very fact that we have thanks for our food. When you eat your supper, when you eat your food, you just put gratitude into that food, you will get more nutrition out of that food.
Perfect.
It's insane. I say insane, crazy, good. It's amazing. And maybe that's a better word for it.
Let's express why. I mean, it's one thing to say that, but for someone who has nothing to attach that anchor to, let's point out why that is. I mean, basically what Emoto did tells us that what you're saying is knowably true. Let's let folks know. And this is the power of intention. It's like this. How many people in your life do you know that always have bad luck? And they're always miserable. Woe is me. It's Emoto is proving why that's true. It's because they're attracting their own negative vibe that they're emitting out into the world. People like my mother. I don't think I ever saw my mother until she had dementia mad, ever in my whole life. I used to drive down the road. I'd pass her and she wouldn't see me and she'd be smiling as she drove. She attracted that her whole life. So let's just point it out that your intention is the basis of Emoto's work. You want to explain it?
From my point of view, you are absolutely 100% correct. People are often their own worst enemy, including myself. And I have to keep reminding myself of this sort of thing because I know it to be true. You will attract what you give out. It just flat out. That's one reason why you don't want to respond to anger or negativity with anger and negativity. The best way to cancel it out is to give it the opposite. And if a person can remember that, which often I don't, and have a gratitude in life, like just go through life thinking how thankful you are for everything that you have, your life will be amazing. And it isn't just because you're not looking for anything more, which quite often you're not. If you're in such a gratitude state of mind, more things will come to you and you will be more of an instrument of the universe to do all this good in the world. So it is your intention and the way you react to things, which you can choose your reaction. Something bad happens to you, you can choose how you feel about it and what you do about it. It is absolutely a choice that we can make as spirit to express through these organic bodies of ours.
So, George, we're coming into the top of the hour. Jace just pinged me. Let me wrap up here real quick. For those who have never heard of Dr. Emoto, which proves so much, in the same way a cymatic plate proves how form is created, what Emoto did is he turned around and said, water has memory. And by the way, your attention can be bedded in it. Then he turned around and proved it. You can see where someone intuited love at water and he froze it and made a beautiful geometry. Someone else intuited, I hate you. And it was this nasty blobby shape. He got Buddhist monks who were practiced meditators to meditate over polluted water. It's all out there for you to go and look. And I couldn't agree with George more. To take this life for granted is a mistake. To be grateful when you sit down to eat, to give thanks, it changes everything. But as we wrap up hour one, if you go to the website, up in the top navigation, there is a link called Sponsored. Click on it. Go all the way down to George Wiseman's link if you are seeking to get one of these devices. That is a sponsored link that he made specially for us the first time he was on. It gets you like $400 or $500 off the device. So now you know why we have it there. That's a pretty good benefit to people reaching out. George, do you just want to give people where they can find you? Although I'm telling you should use the sponsored link if you're going to get anything.
Yeah, the sponsored link is a good way to go. You can still use the coupon. Like when you go to the sponsored link, it'll give a coupon. And if you go to eagle-research.life, so there's a hyphen between eagle like the bird, eagle-research.life, L-I-F-E. You'll see my story. You'll see pictures of melanoma disappearing from people in the studies. You'll see everything pretty much. I divided it out from my main website, which is eagle-research.com, because I have a whole bunch of other alternative energy and pill saver research and stuff over there. People were having trouble finding things, so I made the .life website off to the side to make it easier to do that. And I forget what the coupon code is. I think it's CROW. Just normally 777.
Hold on, I think it's under the thing. It's CROW_777 is what I have printed. It's actually 20% off here, but I think it equates to about $500.
Almost exactly 500. $499.90. Yes.
Oh, you're good at math. All right. So I want to wrap up so we can take a short break and come back for hour two. Look, I don't want to give the perception that this is the cure-all miracle thing, but I do want to give the perception that when this works, it like sets you back on your heels for a minute. When I saw my mom come back from completely drooling, not knowing that she was even alive, to having a conversant conversation, I was blown away. But then I explained to you that she had gotten so far into the disease by then that over some hours of being coherent, sometimes she would become miserable because she was coherent enough to realize what dire straits she was in. And so it was a catch-22, and quite often I opted not to give her the gas. She was 90. I know she's going to die someday before too long, and that's what I did. But hold on, Rose. Oh, it's CROW. It's CROW with one R. Thanks, Rose. CROW_777 is the discount code. I'm going to wrap up, guys. That's been hour one of episode 483 with Jason Lindgren and George Wiseman, who creates the Brown's gas machine. One last time, go to the sponsored link on the top navigation. Second row to the bottom, you will see George's face, and it will say Brown's Gas right under the image. That is the sponsored link. With that, first hour is free to everybody at Pro 777 Radio. That is CRROW777radio.com. Members, of course, know to log in. All members get Shoot the Moon for free and access to everything else that's going on. There will soon be updates with the audio player. We've had so many complaints. You will be able to speed it up, jump forward, jump back, do all these things, and we're making some other upgrades as well. I would like to wish you all a happy, healthy, and higher-minded new era. And it's almost a foregone conclusion that change is going to come fast and furious as we spin by spring here, headed up for the height of the power of the sun this year. Hope to see you guys for the other half of this on pro777radio.com. There it is, man. Cheers.
Belief is the enemy of knowing.